So we're already live, by the way. So let me know when you want to start.
Hi. Okay, we can start anytime. Do you think that this is going to be a serious conversation? This is crazy. In fact, Danny, why don't you introduce our guest for us today? Or do we need to do a spiel about what local frequency is?
Um,
Does one of us need to say, "Hey everybody, welcome to Local Frequency, brought to you by the DMV Music Alliance. We're so excited that you're here to watch our podcast." And we've got Tiffany Jackson with us tonight, and as always, the great Danny Weymouth. Hi, everybody. Say hi. Yay. Tiffany, how do you like to introduce yourself?
Exactly how you did. I need you to just walk around with me every day. Each patient that I go to, just walk up and introduce me that way. That's perfect.
So, are you then like the first musical health and wellness person who needs a hype man? Because basically, I could just be behind you all the time, raising the roof while you're doing
Yes.
all the things that are
Yes.
going down.
Need it.
I'm on board with that.
Need it.
10,000% is where it is at, like there. All right. So Tiffany is awesome. She does. Let's ask you, so how do you introduce yourself? What do you like? How do you describe what it is that you do?
In the entertainment space, I would say that I am the founder of No Lack Community Wellness, which is a entertainment-based mobile wellness brand. So if you think of it as like pop-up wellness for artists and entertainers,
Mhm.
I am the brain behind it, and I am also a PT by trade. So I can do both, right? I run the operations, but I can also work with clients who have various issues, whether it be musculoskeletal, like I was working on set with Beyonce and the speaker fell on me and I broke my ankle. I can be the PT to rehab that person, or I can recruit different service providers. So a little bit of the services that we want to offer when we are at our fullest. IV hydration, so those are going to be run by nurses. We want to have nutritionists, sports performance specialists, massage therapists. So what I do is I vet those providers and make sure that they have the experience and also the passion to work with this group of people. Because musicians and artists, that is a very nuanced space. So I think how I would introduce myself is the brains and the beauty behind No Lack Community Wellness.
okay.
Yes. Okay, so we would say holistic musical wellness. Let's work on your brand.
Yeah, yeah,
Holistic
it is.
musical
What
wellness.
to me, holistic and wellness is like a uh double entendre. I don't know. It repeats itself.
Kind of,
If it's
yeah.
wellness, it's
It's
holistic.
wellness is holistic.
Yeah.
It's true, right? Right. I'm with that. It's cool. How did you get into this? What was it that made you kind of head into this direction, and why choose, working with musicians?
Yeah, good question.
Or, you know, the people who are like in the music industry who aren't performers? Because I mean, there's the thing is, it's like I gotta say, right? I'm asking you the question and then I'm like talking, which is great because it's exactly what I'm gonna be like. I'm like that. I just talk over you before you even start talking. But like that, thank you. But it's like I gotta say, I played a show on Sunday. And like I was doing sound at it too, right? And I just like popped in and played a set or whatever. And it's like we it's we're it's the toll is unbelievable.
Yeah.
When you perform, when you play, when you're like carrying the gear, it doesn't matter who it is. You're on your feet for like 9 hours, right? If you're behind a bar, you're carrying like big speakers if you're doing stage crew. And then we did this thing with like who was it? Duke University, Danny, who we talked to, where they had done their physical medical wellness, like some of their faculty members had done some research on musicians. And what they had found was that like the repetitive stress injuries that we get are insane. And they're like, you it's like you really just you play too much, right? And it's like, well, we practice and perform hours. It's what we do, right? So it's like, and I personally have worn braces before for tendonitis from like playing guitar. I know people who like it's so funny. They tape up like they're going out to like do an athletic thing. And it really
Right.
people don't really think of and they talk about like your voice is like a muscle. The digits that we use, pianists get like carpal tunnel syndrome, guitarists get it like in one hand, drummers burn like a jillion calories a night, because it's so physical. It's what made you kind of step into this space because it's I don't think it's something people really appreciate that how physical it actually is.
So on the medical side, because there's two sides, right? Like there's the PT service provider side, and that's a more common, story. I was an athlete myself. I played college softball for 4 years, and when I was finished, I knew that I wanted to either go into sports, either management, sports broadcasting, or sports medicine. Um,
Hmm.
Sports management is and sports broadcasting was one of them you had to take a bunch of different maths and the other one you had to do a bunch of different like Englishes. I didn't really want to do that. Anatomy and science has always interested me,
Hmm.
so I went the sports medicine route. And from there in PT school, I had decided I made a switch. So there was a point where anatomy got really, really easy. I felt like I knew the body, I understood physics, I understood how everything worked. And I got an internship at National Rehab Hospital in Washington, D.C.
Cool.
And the way these internships work, you have what's called a preceptor, or basically somebody's over you that makes sure you don't kill the patients that you're working on. So my preceptor was in charge of the stroke, amputee, and post-polio clinic. Now, this was a completely different world for me. So I've been working with athletes who cared about their bodies. They were high performers. They had a lot of resources. And I went to working with a group of people who some had insurance, some didn't. Um, some people, you know, I know a guy was hit by a trash truck one time, and that was, his main source of income was doing waste management. Trash truck ran over him, double amputee, his entire life has changed. So from there, I had to really think about and be introduced to a different demographic of people who really needed help. And I could still use anatomy, I could still use physiology, but more of it was neurological. So the difference between like an orthopedic PT and a neurologic PT, orthopedics is more like bones, joints, knowing how those things works. Neurology is brain, nerves. How does the brain connect to the body? And so I went into a residency so that I could really hone those skills and really at a high level learned and was mentored. I had worked with, spinal cord injuries, brain injuries, young people to, the oldest people. And when I finished and I got my dream job, I still didn't feel like I was fulfilled. And so it was a very jarring experience because you go through all of this school and you feel like you finally reached the pinnacle of your career, and then you're just like, this is not it. And from
Right.
there, I had to ask myself while I looked at the student loan debt that I still had, and I'm like, okay, I'm not leaving this profession. I need to find some sort of light, some sort of joy in it.
Right.
And the two things that stuck out to me were being able to educate my patients. So letting them know, this is how your body works. This is why rehab is important. This is why wellness is important. And the vibe of the clinic, the energy. I've always been an energy person. I have musicians. Every person in my family on my father's side, actually, except for him, has been or is a musician at a high level. So I've grown up around music. I have said and sometimes that music saved me. In 2022, my brand was actually born out of me experiencing COVID to the point where I went into a very deep depression. And the only thing that I felt pulled me out of that was being able to listen to podcasts, to listen to sermons, listen to live music performances. And when I was done, I asked myself, do these musicians, do these artists have the same support that sports performance people have? And after doing a deep dive, I realized that in some cases, yes. So the headliners, the people who, are right with the record label, making all the money, they have that support. But their constituents, the people who tech, the people who set up the stage, the dancers, the unionized workers, they didn't have that support. Um,
the 1% of the 1% have anything they
Exactly.
want,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like the people who are just like sweating it out, they got nothing, right?
Right. At No Lack, we actually have a few like sub slogans, and one of the sub slogans for us is "Reach the 1%," because you get these huge music productions. I mean, you look at Beyonce, Kendrick Lamar, Chris Brown, these people selling out these stadium tours,
Yeah,
and they are, of course, high level performers, but we don't get to see the days and weeks that people spend putting up the stage, breaking down the stage, and the toll that it takes on their body.
right.
So, what our goal is to do is to reach the 1% of those people who actually still bring the show to life. We want to get visibility to everybody from the headliner all the way down to the person who is even selling water at the venue.
Right. That's and it's so great because like I mean that's why you're here. One of the things that I'd love to talk to you about too, it's like there's so much I want to ask you about. But like so the things that I see and have seen in all my years doing it, it's like there's it's the ear damage. Right. It's
Mm,
like ear protection. I mean, it's like there's the musculature, there's like the bones, there's like all the stuff that's there or whatever. But I honestly, it's like I protect my ears now. Like, I mean, I'm never without ear protection, and I've
yeah.
invested like crazy in it. What do you get involved in that at all, or like was this kind of thing where you would like help with audiology or what? Because I mean, it's it's like aircraft hangar loud sometimes
Mm.
where we're working,
Yeah, and
like
we do from a service provider. What's so great about us is that our services are tailor-made, right? So if I came to a record label and they were saying, one of the biggest complaints from our drummers is that they feel like they're experiencing hearing loss. I have audiologists who I can call in different areas and they can, come out. So this is like I almost call like the Build a Bear workshop of mobile wellness. I have a question for you though, because that's interesting. Was there an event that helped you realize that your ears, like what prompted you to be like, okay, I need to start protecting my ears?
when yeah, when was it? You know what it was? It was studio work.
Okay.
Like really got into it's like because when you're younger you think you're just like invulnerable, right? I just did damage to myself when I
Yeah.
was younger. But then again, I also like pierced my ears with like safety pins and stuff like that back then too. So it's not like we had like a really high regard for stuff, and it's like yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's like you dip the safety pin in like a thing of vodka and you like poke it through your ear. That's what it used to be like, right?
That's sterilized. It's
Yeah.
sterile.
Yeah, it was that's in the back of like a really dirty club bathroom. Legit, true story. So it's like, it's like that's where it goes, right? And you think you can handle everything. And you also think that's like, and with it's like, it's like a total sausage fest too, right? It's like it's such a dude thing to be macho and be like, oh, I can handle it, it's fine, whatever, power through it and all that kind of thing, right? But it's like the ability to hear and really listen to music becomes like so important, right? And it's like it's when I started, it's the pandemic actually was one of the better things for me because
Mhm.
it's like it was quiet for like there was like a couple of years of quiet that occurred, and it was interesting to think about how it kind of like started to calm down for me, right?
Yeah,
But I was already wearing earplugs before that. But at that point, then it just became a situation where it's like now it's like I invested in a really good set. And at the first time, I was like, why am I spending like a couple $100 on earplugs? But then I'm like, the damage never goes away. It's like
sure.
I knew too many people with tinnitus, too many people who are like dealing with it and stuff. And I'm like, when I sit in front of like a set of studio monitors and I'm listening to a mix, and it's like you're like actively listening. So Danny, I'll be straight. Danny loves to talk about like the crazy stuff in my life. I broke up with a girl once because she talked while I listened to music. I couldn't handle it. Right. It was like, you'd be sitting there and it's like, this is like a thing. And that we talk about this. Musicians talk about it, right? Like, where it's like, look, when we listen to music, we actually listen, right?
Mhm.
It's an active. experience. It's like you're sitting there and you're like you're listening to not just like the words or the beat or anything. You're listening to how the thing is put together. You're listening to like where the turns are in the music. You're listening to how it's produced, like what layers of guitars and keyboards and different sounds are in there. And you're going, how did that happen? Right? You're like, really, because it's like you analyze it, you're actively listening. And when you're sitting there like really getting in, or you're like emotionally moved by it, and it's like, and then like right when you're really getting into it, somebody goes, hey, it'd be great. Let's go get a pizza and stuff like that. And it's like, dude, get off my cloud,
Yeah.
or I'm working. It's like this is part of like our thing, right? But it's like when you really listen to stuff at that level, and it's super interesting to think about it too, like because really heavy duty mixing engineers stop. Like you'll work for like a couple hours, but you don't go past that. You take a break to rest your ears
Mm,
able to like move on it and stuff like that. And so it's like, and then like you start doing sound, and this is one of the, once you start to get to know microphones and stuff like that. So this is another thing that happens with like guitar players, right? And Danny knows this too because it's like it totally goes down that way. And it's like the guitar player is gonna be like, "Hey man, stop turning my amp down because I need my tone." Right? Like they're on stage and they're like, man, it's like the sound guy is there and they're like, dude, man, I need my tone. And they're sitting there with like this, like, I mean, I've got them in this room, right? There's like amps back there that have like 12-inch speakers in them, and like the PA system only has 12-inch speakers in it, and everything's like going through it. And I'm like, dude, your amplifier is actually louder than the PA. It can be as loud or louder as the PA, this like huge like Marshall stack that you have, right? It's like that's more speaker and more wattage than a lot of house PA systems are going to have, right? And it's like now you have to think the microphone that I'm putting on it is the exact same microphone that the vocalist has, which means my speaking voice is the same as your 1,000 watt like
yeah.
blasting speaker that's designed to push air like hundreds of feet to like get to someone all the way in the back of the room, right? So that's why you have to turn down. And they're like, oh, I can only get my tone this way. And it's like, dude, you have to be a pro. You need to be able to get your tone at this volume,
Mm,
right? You need to be
yeah.
able to have
Yeah.
your tone so I can hear it on these monitors that are on either side of where I'm sitting right now and not blasting it in my ears so that
That's
I don't
good.
have that damage, right? And it's like, and if your vocalist is having to like go to the top of the range all the time to be able to keep up with you, you're hurting them. You're actually
Yeah.
physically hurting your band members with your tone. And that's not cool, right? It's like, you can go do your slam dance stuff.
I asked you that because you are one of the few, I think, musicians who I've spoken to who seem, very in tune. You're very aware of these things. There is a large group of individuals out there who are creating in survival mode, right? Like, if I can get this gig, I don't care that I haven't slept or that I have to take 3 shots before I go on stage in order to calm down, or that I have to, do the same thing after I'm done to wind down. And that so the
You just brought up
funneling
an
down, like you asked a great question about referral sources and like who the providers are. That's actually the easy part. In this industry, what's challenging is that people are on go mode so much that they don't even know they need. Like people see my table. I did an event with Danny a couple years ago, and people came up to me. They're like, "What are you like wellness? Why are you in the back? Like, are you giving out massages? Like, what are you doing back there?" And I spend most of my time, I ask a few questions, right? Like, are you nervous before you go on stage? And some of the macho, the guys are like, oh, no, I don't get nervous. I don't. Does your heart rate increase? I mean, yeah, but it's, I just hit a J before. And I'm like, okay, what you might not feel like is nerves or anxiety is your body responding in a different way.
right,
And
right,
so if you are like a hip hop mixed with metal based artists, somebody who I spoke to at one of the events, and you're constantly having to output this energy, you're screaming, you're jumping around, your heart rate is going up further, you could predispose yourself to passing out or to having some sort of like anxiety, panic based attack without you knowing it. So,
right.
with our brand, I think is important in that we have to first raise awareness that it's even a need. That's like the biggest part. And then after that, there's tons of resources. There are, clinicians and dance therapists. There are schools that are specifically teach music physical therapy. They specifically teach dance physical therapy, voice physical therapy, where you learn how to teach people how to activate their diaphragm so that they sound louder, so that they can, produce more vocally.
Hmm?
And the issue isn't getting that learning. The issue isn't finding the PTs. It's almost like we have to shake the music industry and say like, "Hey, you're killing people. Like people are killing themselves because their mental health is not where it needs to be, but they're pushing through or they're creating music that's putting them further in a spiral." And it's just like you said, there needs to be a pause. And it doesn't mean that there needs to be a stop. But I think if we can bring awareness to the fact that physical health, sleep, getting physicals, nutrition, like that those things are important, we can sort of start a conversation that eventually gets us to exactly what you're talking about, to where somebody is like, well, you know what? I, I do, my ears do ring weeks after I have a gig or weeks after I go to a show. People are not, they're not thinking on the level that you are.
Yeah, what gets me, dude, is like when I listen to Dave Grohl, right? And that guy just like he's all the way out and then he like sings perfectly. I'm like, what
Mm,
are your vocal cords made of?
mm,
Because like people like John Mayer, they had to like they got nodes and they scarred them and like couldn't talk for a year while they healed. Right. Literally, there's like you hear stories about like on tour, like Taylor Swift, she like gives people a card that says, "I'm sorry, I can't talk to you."
yeah,
It's like I'm resting my voice until tomorrow. Right.
right.
And because it is. It's like, and that's like another one that happens. You're hanging out at the club, you're out in the audience, you're waiting for the band to get over so you come up next and you don't realize it, but you're like talking at the top of your voice. You're sitting here like wearing your voice out, and then you're going to go out and shriek and scream and do the stuff too. And
Mhm.
that's another, I mean, I guess I just felt my age at a certain point. And I
Yeah,
was like, I want to keep doing this. And I took a break in my plan for a while, to like, have the family and stuff like that. And I couldn't really like go out anymore. But it's like now, it's like if I hit it as hard as I used to, I mean, I wouldn't be there. But you brought up a really good one too, like the guy hitting the J or like doing a few shots like before the show. And we have partners, the Madison House, like down south in Virginia, which is like a kind of a like how would you describe it? I mean, it's like it's a house, like it's kind of a halfway house rehab house for like musicians.
It's a safe space for kids who are trying to utilize art and music instead of drugs and alcohol.
Right.
mm,
And they
Yeah.
have a lot of programs and stuff. But I'm chomping at the bit here, David, right?
Am I talking too much? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
just
saying?
a tad. But
Well, then get in here. Get in here and say some stuff. What? Chomp, bit,
so
go.
you guys were
I was
talking
gonna
about
ask
the
her about the
music.
drugs,
Well,
but I'll
you
just go
guys were
take
talking
some
about the
instead.
music industry, and it's all revolving around musicians, and you know that like drives me insane, right?
mm.
Because
I've
you
talked
know,
about sound people. I talked about producers and mixers.
yeah, but
Talk
okay.
about the front of the house and the back
I'm
of
just
the
gonna
house,
talk
baby.
over you.
Go. Talk
Okay,
over
so
me.
Tiffany, we talked about this once, right? About how you were trying to approach, artists and their management and things along those lines, right? But when have we actually looked at the venues and the studios and the people who are working there and try to approach them about taking care of their staff, right? Because looking at it from the touring artist standpoint is only part of it, right? So you guys are talking all about this. What about the people who are the door staff, who are and the sound and the lighting guys and whatnot who work for the venues, not
Yeah,
necessarily the artists or the labels or the management. And, having worked at certain venues, I can tell you, for the most part, venues don't really think about taking care of their employees, not, physically, not mentally, I mean, all of the meant, the things that we see as staff, and our coworkers dying and committing suicide and, hurting their backs, their ankles, their knees, and having to stand there essentially in the same place for hours and hours and hours, I mean, the bartenders too, right? So, and we just get, those little styrofoam, or not styrofoam, those little, squishy earplugs that go into our ears. And
Hmm.
I can tell you, like you guys are talking about hearing, I'm already at the point where I am approved for earplugs. Because, just being as a fan going to metal shows and working in venues, and when we're trying to talk to people in the venue or we're trying to talk to our coworkers while music is going on, I can't hear shit. I will ask people a few times, what? And it's, I mean, that's from a decade of working at venues and more,
Yeah, yeah.
Do you get the
And what
one
I
when
what
you
I
say
would
like
say,
what? No, well, wait, do you get the one when you're like what? And then they come right into your ear and yell it even louder?
and I still can't hear, or I can
No,
hear,
but
but I
that's like
can't
just like
understand
that
them.
doesn't make it better. That makes it worse. It's like where it's at. But that's the idea that there are actually people don't know about it. There's earplugs that are designed for you to be able to hear people talking while there is loud noise around you. Like ear
Yes.
mhm.
rancers have little antennas in them that pick up certain frequencies. But I interrupted. Go ahead. Keep
Yeah,
talking.
no, I mean, that's it. I'm off my soapbox. But
Yeah, no, that I
yeah,
mean
But what do you do
that's
for the venues to help? I mean, this is the other thing, right? So like that top tier can afford you. You can make a living doing this,
yeah,
right? When we
yeah.
talk about like helping like musicians who are up and coming get compensated, and we look at like right now, you got stuff here in DC where it's like minimum wage for like bar staff and for wait staff is back up in front of the council again.
Hmm.
It's like, we're not, one of the things is we help musicians figure out how they're going to actually get health care, like
Hmm.
help them like get on the exchange, or we help them figure out if they qualify for Medicaid, which pretty much everybody does, because if you're just making music, you're not making that much doing it when you're coming up.
Right,
So it's
right,
like the venues don't have health plans. Their people
right.
are hourly and they're part-time. It's like, you're hammered, and it's like so it's a really vulnerable population.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really
And I think Danny, that's a really great point that you bring up. What I love that I get to do is look at the parallel between my history with athletes and musicians. And there's actually a lot of parallel as far as the demand, right? So you see somebody who's like a high performer, somebody like a LeBron James, and somebody who is doing like a small city tour. If you put those two people up side to side, of course, they may have a different build and they may have, different, physique and everything like that. But what is interesting is that the work demand on those two individuals is quite similar. So, and I would say even like to your doorman, we think of the build that you need to be a doorman at security, right? These are our kind of bigger guys. They may not always be the healthiest. If you take that individual and you stand him up for 9 hours at a time, he is exerting almost as many calories and as much, energy, losing as much glucose as an individual who is playing a high level basketball game. And so I think it is getting in front of these executives, it's getting in front of the labels, it's getting in front of the owners of the clubs, and even, giving some education. Like, hey, maybe you don't schedule your guys back to back nights, or maybe if you schedule one to work late, you don't schedule him to open. They need actual breaks in the same way that athletes need recovery time. So that's kind of one way that we go about it. Now the other way, and these are for I think more progressive venues who are kind of buying more into the wellness kind of space, and they don't think it's super woo woo, is like you set up a room. Set up a sensory stimulation room in the back of the club. Put a treatment table back there, put a couple of pamphlets back there in the room where guys can go through some self-guided stretches, have water. I mean, these are things that are so small that would make a world of difference. Mandated water breaks, mandated water intake, so that you're not having guys out there just dehydrating themselves and then not even being safe. I think of security people who like at the end of a 9 hour shift, if something were to really, go down, how physically and mentally good are you going to be at the end of that shift to, actually break up something without hurting yourself? So those,
So yeah, so I'm just gonna say this idea of security and door staff being these big guys, um, a tiny bit, but that's not the
mm,
average person. The average person is, I mean, we have girls and guys anywhere from like 21 years old to 60 years old,
mm,
right? Little girls who are 5 feet tall, big guys who are over 6 feet. I mean, it ranges, so it's not just these big guys. Um,
yeah,
but think about too, most of venue workers are getting minimum wage. So they're going to sign up for as many hours as the venue will give them, right? Every single day they're working, basically trying to earn enough money to pay the bills. So the idea of like scheduling a day on, off, whatever,
yeah.
who can afford to do that? You
So it
know,
sounds like what would be more helpful is having something in-house or even having education, right? So if you, because
it's an
that
education.
absolutely that makes sense. If you're kind of, working for hours and you need as much as you can get, maybe the day before you go into work, you hydrate, or maybe the venues put out some sort of education to their workers so that they know like this is what a balanced meal looks like before your shift or a couple days before your shift. Here's a PDF of some stretches that you guys can do before your shift or halfway so that you're not, getting stiff at the door. Because I appreciate that lens. And that makes sense where like if you need the hours, if you need to work, it speaks to this kind of fight or flight, push through type of mindset. And I do think in this industry, what will tank people who want to do music-based wellness and entertainment wellness is us coming in and thinking that we can say, "Oh, you need more sleep, so don't work." That's out of the question, right? We need to meet people where they are and kind of integrate. How are we gonna get you more, mentally grounded? How can you be mentally grounded while you're at work? If it doesn't look like stepping away from the door, maybe it does look like getting earplugs, making sure that you're hydrated, taking a bathroom break if you can. So I just appreciate that perspective. Because it actually makes sense and is realistic to what a true like doorman or somebody who's at a venue actually goes through.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, everybody, crew, bartenders, everybody, right?
Yeah,
So I mean, that's just one piece of it. Another piece are, the average musician, they're just driving around in cars or vans or something, right? Trying to do like their mini tour on their own. So, they have to if they can pay for a hotel, but a lot of times they're not, right? So they're eating fast food on the road. They're around, sitting in cars for hours on end, driving from one city to another. I mean, there's tons and tons of ways that we are not taking care of ourselves in the music industry. Tons.
yeah,
So I think definitely education at all angles needs to happen. And there are like little things that we can do that don't necessarily take a lot of money, but we're not trained that way, right? So like even the idea of being, a door staffer and standing for hours, um, my understanding just from having, tons of orthopedic issues is, you need to be moving your joints, every like 20 minutes or something to lubricate them so that you don't develop arthritis and joint issues later, right? So that seems like something we could just work into it.
yeah. That, posture. Can we put a chair at the door that might be even like a high chair so somebody, oh no, that's against the rules. No, no, absolutely no sitting. Is it a zero sitting situation
Some,
at the door?
nah, nah.
Okay.
I mean, once, some positions, but most of them no.
Or maybe showing, so when people think posture, they think, right, like sit up straight, shoulders back. But what can really prevent degenerative changes at the ankles, knees, and joints is being able to shift your postures. So, can we talk about how maybe taking notice of, is all of my weight on my right leg for 4 hours? Do I need to make sure my stance is even? Do I need, simple things like that? Are important. Bartenders, how are you placing the cups on the tray if you're a server? How are we stacking the bar? Is it in a way that's safe? Is it in a way where we're like hyperextending our shoulders, or we're putting ourselves at a predisposal for more back injuries? Almost like ergonomics, but for a bar. There are PTs who specialize solely in going into offices and checking, is the computer set up correctly so that you don't get carpal tunnel or have neck injuries? That same sort of system, I think, could be plugged in to an entertainment space just to make sure that the workers are safe from the setup of the whole system.
And bartenders have that squishy stuff. Door staff and crew do not. That stuff that you're standing on. So, talk
Mhm.
about the padding underneath and the shoes. Nobody's talking about shoe wear either.
Yeah,
Instead, we're walking around in like cheap $20 sneakers or whatever, and think about what that's doing to us. um,
yeah,
no one's really talking about ergonomics for the stage hands and so I mean, standing in one place doing sound and lighting is one thing, but what about the ones who are pushing cases, and they're working by the time you're getting to the venue hours and hours beforehand, right? And then setting up the stage and then standing around for hours. And then, you're there for at least a couple hours after the show ends. And at the end of, a 15-hour shift, you're pushing cases again into the truck or whatever,
right.
or carrying them or whatever. So, I mean, there's so many different ways I could just go off,
Yeah. I piloted our system with a production company who ran a play a couple of years ago. And what we did was set up treatment table backstage, kind of had like a wellness room set up, and we worked for tech week. So the week leading up to the performance, and we worked all three performances. And I'll tell you, they had a crew, cast and crew of maybe 30 people. The first day, people saw me at my table and they kind of like, look, like, what is, like, the gym is that way, like you're out of place. But by the last day, I had a sign up sheet. 20 out of the 30 people I saw, whether it was, the way I've been wearing my headset is hurting my neck. Can you work with me? Or I was driving. I had to drive back to New York and back here to Maryland for the play, and my back is really bothering me. Can you check me out? They really started to buy into what they needed, but it was only after the first, 2 or so weeks of me bringing awareness to the fact that, like, hey, we're here. We can screen you for injuries, or we can help you sort of recover from any muscle stiffness that you've had just from everyday life. And this isn't always direct music industry related issue. If you have lived more than, I would say, 15, 20 years, you are going to have some sort of orthopedic pain that you're dealing with. And so our job is to be able to come in and meet the needs of those individuals, because like you said, they don't always have insurance. Even if they have another job or another side gig, a
yeah,
lot of times, and we know where, our healthcare system is headed. Even if you do have insurance, sometimes your copay for a specialist is $50 to $75, and you're not even able to see them on a consistent basis. So I agree with you. There is a lot of opportunity. I think that wellness is kind of like a trendy word right now. A lot of people are starting to do it. I haven't seen it a lot in the musician and entertainment space overlay. So
yeah,
I'm just really excited about, the foundation that I'm setting, and I think the opportunities that we have to build first in this area, and then hopefully nationwide.
yeah. Yeah. So you want to build, I mean, what would this look like? I mean, is this, approaching venues and, like how would you actually reach and roll out different programs for different uh components of the music industry.
Yeah, there's a couple of highlight things that I want to hit. So I definitely want to hit tours
Mhm.
because those are, to me, in my knowledge, the toughest thing. I mean, you're in multiple cities, you are on a bus, you're not sleeping, you're not eating well. So we would either approach the record label because what you need is the funding, right? So let's say Kendrick Lamar is going on 20 city tour, we reach out to the record label and say, hey, we want to provide pop up wellness clinics at each of these tour legs. And what we would do is have a physical therapist, a nutritionist, a chiropractor on set, depending on what they needed, and be there at the day of the tour so that we could work either with the headliner or with, the stage crew or the tech crew. So it's kind of like a almost like a mobile wellness service. Like we will come out to you.
Yeah.
Um, that's one arm. And the other arm that I've recently become more invested in or I'm looking at is music festivals. I have been to at least 10 music festivals in the past 3, 4 years. There have not been one where a medical event has occurred. Either somebody is dehydrated and passed out, or that's the biggest thing that you see. Sometimes you see like anxiety attacks because of like the closeness in space. And so setting up a mobile wellness tent that the fans, the people who are paying customers can use as either a first responder or wellness-based services is something else that we could do. So it's a model that we can plug in to a lot of different things. But what we need right now is providers. So high-level individuals like myself who are interested in working with musicians in different areas of the country who we can bring onto our team who can support these different events. I would say that like we're working on now building our providers list and still networking in this area.
Yep. So we're kind of running out of time, but at some point we need to talk about how we can reach the other 90% of the industry.
Sure,
Because that's where the DME Music Alliance is focused, is all of the under, the little people. Um,
sure,
so how are we going to reach all them? And when you were talking about insurance, you know, um, for all those people who don't make a lot of money, they're on Medicaid. Unless you're like it's an emergency, you can't use Medicaid outside of your state.
sure. Yeah,
So when they're doing these small tours from city to city and they get sick, they, for the most part, have to pay for that out of their pocket. Or if they have some sort of orthopedic, issue or whatever it may be, right? They're still, even with insurance, still have to pay out of pocket. Um,
right.
so yeah, there's a whole bunch of different pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah. What I could suggest for smaller artists if they are willing to do the work. Some of the pay may have to be out of pocket, but it is at an exorbitantly different rate than, a PT clinic who you don't know who's going to charge you $200 per session. Sometimes what I've done is work individually on one or one-on-one with the person. I've done a movement screen and said, "Hey, you have these orthopedic issues. I can treat you once a week or twice a week, depending on, financially what that looks like. But these are things that you can do at home.
Yeah.
These are things that we can either meet on Zoom to do. So it can get as big or as small as we like. I definitely see no lack serving the wide, broad scale. But for right now, I think partnerships are important. So me partnering with you guys and you guys getting me into the areas where I can meet these people or even set up a treatment table and do, pro bono treatments, 30-minute movement screens, 5, 10-minute movement screens to get people education about their bodies and what's going on with them, I think is a good start.
I think getting partnerships with these, you know, other, these big companies that are in the medical sphere already, even something like, CVS or, you know, whatever, right? So that they sponsor some of these programs. I think we need to talk about that at some point.
Yeah. The people with the money, we have to find
Yeah,
the
yeah,
dollars.
yeah.
We have the
So,
workers.
Yeah. So what else and we can cut this piece out, but anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Um, I think we covered a lot, you know, what our mission is, what we're trying to reach. I appreciate the feedback from you of, you know, what certain jobs look like because I do agree when people hear entertainment, they automatically go to a worldwide tour or they automatically go to like a singer or, you know, somebody on stage. So really getting an idea of what that 1% that I talked about earlier looks like is going to be important for me so that I don't like part of my mission is to work with top to bottom. So I need to understand what that looks like. So I appreciate your lens on that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, great. So tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Yep. So my Instagram handle is at no lack wellness. Our webpage is nolack.card.co. The card has two R's, so nolack.carrd.co. I'm the most responsive through those two search engines. If I add any more, you probably won't get a response from me. So those are the top two that I would go with right now.
Yeah, yeah. All right. David, any last words? Or should I not ask you? Because
What makes you think that I would have a bunch of last words? No, I think this has been so fantastic. And it really is. I love to, it's like, how do we figure out how to bring this to people in a way that it's accessible and affordable? Is like really difficult. You know, you're not really going to be in a space where you're like accepting insurance and stuff like that, you know? So
yes,
it's like, you know, and where the out of pocket goes. But what's so hard about it is is like you don't know you need it until it's like a career ending kind of thing.
Sure.
It's like where it shows up, it's like, oh crap, now I'm screwed. You know, it's like, or it's like we come out of it. And that's it's just tough to really think about it in those regards. And it's like, yeah, oh my God, I screwed my back up doing this thing. Like, whereas I played a show with a guy, he's like, yeah, I got to sit on a stool tonight. You know, it's like my back is wrecked. You
Yeah.
know, it's just like
Yeah.
that's how it is, you know, and
Yep.
it's like you don't want to be in pain like when you're doing what you do.
Right.
So it's so great that you're here and that you're in this space where
yeah,
there's such a need. And sometimes I think just raising attention to it too. But I know that we've got one of the things that we're doing are setting up like events for musicians for professional development, for personal care, stuff like that. So when we get those things together, having you at a table just to meet people doing demonstrations, education is where it's at. It's fantastic what you're doing on social media to reach out to people and let them know what's happening. You're the kind of person who like needs to be an influencer, right? Because it's like this concept of like I'm an influencer, because you like sit around, you know, and you like pretending like your life is the way it is.
Yeah.
You literally need to influence people to take care of themselves.
Sure.
And so that like what we can do can continue to like help heal people. And it's
Yeah.
it's where it's at. So much gratitude for you and what you
yeah,
do. It's
absolutely.
fun.
Yeah,
Thank you
So glad
guys.
you're with us today.
we need you so much.
And completely looking forward to hanging out with you at our next local frequency show so that you
Oh yeah,
can meet those people, right? So let's make that happen.
yeah.
Very good.
So Tiffany will be with us uh Monday night, Monday
Yep.
night
21st.
at the
Mhm.
Pocket. So yeah, you'll have a table set up there, and people get to talk to you then, and over the loud music as it is. But
Yeah.
yes, we'll work that out.
It's gonna be a loud one. We've
Yes.
got what Hugh and Samia and they're all coming on to talk to us about how they're gonna do some ear damage. So we should one of us needs to go out there and get like a big bag of those foam ear plugs
Okay.
for what's gonna go down in that space. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have the earplugs at my table. I can.
It's a funny one when I go to shows, you know, it's like I always I wear mine, but I carry spares. And I honestly leave empty pockets when I
Are they
go.
the custom ones or are they just the foam ones?
But
You
the
have
ones
custom
I
ones,
carry in
right?
my pocket are just foam ones, right? Mine are
Oh,
customs. But like, it's just like I'm like people, you see them. It's like, and that's something that really venues. I've seen some venues do it where there's like a fishbowl of like earplugs. Honestly, putting those out there for people is a small, small thing, but it's so big.
Yeah.
Making those earplugs available, it's a big one. Because I mean, really, when you think about it, I was like, I can't think. It's on the top of my head. I think it's like if you're over like 108 decibels, you're damaging. And you can like turn your phone on, and there's apps where you can see what the meters are. And
Hmm.
you're like, dude, I love to be up on the front of the stage. I'm like, you really do not love to be up on the front of the stage.
I don't even think it's 108. I think it's like more around 90, right?
Yeah, it's like it's
Or somewhere
yeah,
around there. Yeah.
it's yeah, it's yeah, it's amazing. And often it's like 120 inside the room.
Yeah.
It's like it gets pretty rough pretty fast. So that's where it's at. Do we have time to take a break? Uh
We do. So, Tiffany, thank you very much. Yeah, we're going to end this, and then we have three people in the waiting room for our next podcast.
Good. Thank you guys.
Right
Yeah,
on. All
absolutely.
right. See you
Thank
later,
you so
Tiffany.
much. We'll
Thank you
talk
so
soon.
much. We'll talk to you
All right.
soon.
All right.
Bye.